Yo, what is up, y'all? It's Cone back here again today for another video. You might notice the background's weird. I'm actually holding the mic. I'm in Vegas right now for Summer League in an Airbnb, so I'm not my usual setup. So if the sound sounds weird or the lighting's weird, I apologize. But of course, knowing me, I had to get another video out. Last night, we got a report that the Knicks and Jazz have discussed a potential Donovan Mitchell trade, and that's a huge step because we went from the Jazz disappointing at the end of the regular season with Donovan Mitchell, Gobert, Conley, Bogdanovich, like that core failing to make it out of the first round, and then last year as the one seed, falling in the second round to an undermanned Clippers team without Kawhi Leonard. It was pretty clear that things needed to change for the Utah Jazz, and so I applaud them for finally making the decision to get that going, trading Gobert to the Timberwolves for what was a huge haul, bringing in a lot of great role players too in Pat Bev, Jared Vanderbilt, Leandro Balmoro, I think has some potential as well. They've got role players like Jordan Clarkson, Mike Conley, Bogdanovich, who they can trade for picks too. They did a really good job in that Rudy Gobert trade, getting assets in both players and picks. I think they've been killing it so far, and now talking with the New York Knicks about making a trade, sending Donovan Mitchell to the Big Apple to be the superstar, at least hopefully for the Knicks, player that they've been looking for a while, probably since Carmelo Anthony. They had Julius Randle, who had that huge season last year, but now his contract kind of an albatross. They have a young talent in RJ Barrett. They just signed Jalen Brunson to a huge deal. So they're trying to put something together in New York. Kind of seems like the game plan. And Donovan Mitchell kind of seems to be the piece that they are going for. So in my mind, I think the Jazz realize they need to move on from Mitchell. The Knicks seem very motivated to get a Mitchell deal done and have all of their draft capital still available. Other interested teams like the Heat, for example, don't have that many picks. Other teams, I'm sure like the Lakers, would love to get involved. They don't have the assets. Other contenders. It just feels like he's probably going to end up going to the Knicks. That's really the only team that seems like they have the assets and is interested in making a trade for him, putting together the package that the Jazz are going to ask for, which is going to be a huge package. Rudy Gobert, of course, got a bunch of role players and then a bunch of picks. With the New York Knicks, they're not going to give up RJ Barrett. I guarantee you they're going to do everything they can to not give him up. So I don't expect him to go anywhere. So I'm guessing it's going to be some combination of like quickly, maybe like Julius Randle's contract will probably be in there, probably like Derrick Rose's contract too, a bunch of picks, like Quentin Grimes is apparently a name that the Jazz are interested in, so I'd expect some combination of like Rose, Randle, quickly Grimes, like 4 first-round picks, like 3 swap, like something insane like that is probably going to be the package going to the Utah Jazz. And if they're able to pull something like that off, that would be huge for them because then they would have the huge Rudy Gobert package, and Donovan Mitchell probably has more. He definitely has more trade value than Rudy Gobert, I would say, at this point. So they're going to get comparable, if not better, draft capital compensation in a move like that. So the Jazz are off to a really good start with their rebuild. The 2023 draft is stacked with Victor Wembanyama. That's a name you've probably heard a few times on this channel. If you haven't, then you should totally subscribe because you definitely will hear it. Scoot Henderson, a great guard prospect, Thompson twins. There are a lot of great players in this draft. Dariq Whitehead as well. So there's a million guys to go after in this draft class. The West, only the Spurs are really tanking, so it makes sense to go trade Donovan Mitchell and get this huge haul. For the Jazz, it makes sense. My big qualm comes with the Knicks side of things. I think trading for Donovan Mitchell would be a big mistake for the Knicks. To me, one of the worst things that happened to the Knicks was a few years ago when they got that 4 seed. They had an incredible season. Julius Randle was an All-NBA player, which is still kind of insane looking back on it. All-NBA second team nonetheless. He was incredible. He was legitimately dominant for that year. He was making the craziest, toughest mid-range jumpers I've ever seen. He was efficient. He was playmaking well. He was leading. He was a defensive force at times. He was really, really good. Tom Thibodeau had a great year there. I believe he won Coach of the Year. Manuel quickly had a good season. RJ Barrett has been getting better. Like, they had a really good year that year as the 4 seed, but it clearly didn't work out. They clearly were not good enough. And the problem was they tried to run things back. They kind of just were like, okay, we'll just pick up a couple more pieces in like Fournier and Kemba Walker. Will go ahead and add like role players like that, and we'll just try and run this thing back and see if it works. And it wasn't necessarily bad moves. They did need scoring with Kemba and Evan Fournier, but it didn't work. And now I think they're just trying to go too hard into this thing. I think that if they just stayed the course, focused on RJ Barrett as like the future of their team, I think they got too into their heads with the 4 seed thing. And now they're trying to put together a really expensive roster that I'm not sure can compete out in the Eastern Conference. Say they make a move without giving up any major pieces outside of Julius Randle. So you would have a starting lineup of like Jalen Brunson, Donovan Mitchell, RJ Barrett, Obi Toppin, and Mitchell Robinson. Say that's your starting five. What that still to me is like a playing team. Like, you're not better than the Sixers, you're not better than the Bucks, you're not better than the Heat, you're not better than the Celtics. They're not better than the Raptors, I don't think, with that team. That's at least five. There are other up-and-coming young teams. The Hawks with DeJounte Murray now. The Cavs are going to keep getting better. Like, I still think at best they're like a 7 seed with that team. The Eastern Conference is way better than it was a couple years ago when they got that 4 seed. And sure, like, that's a pretty solid starting lineup, but your guard defense is really, your defense as a whole is really going to struggle. I don't think that that roster that they put together there is any better than any of the Jazz rosters we've seen with that year where they got the 1 seed where it was like Conley, who was an all-star, Mitchell, who was an all-star, Gobert was great, Bogdanovich, Joe Ingles, like Jordan Clarkson, like they had a really good team around Donovan Mitchell. And now you put him in a spot where the supporting cast is worst and they're capping themselves out. Because Donovan Mitchell's making a ton of money. You just gave Jalen Brunson a max, and I'm assuming if you make that deal, RJ, his extension is going to come soon, and if not an extension, then next year he'll probably sign somewhere near a max contract, assuming he doesn't get hurt, or he doesn't have like this huge regression or anything. So you're building around a core of Jalen Brunson, Donovan Mitchell, RJ Barrett, Mitchell Robinson, Obi Toppin. That's kind of your game plan. And you are locking yourselves in to, at worst, you're going to be like the 10 or 11 seed. Like, I don't think they'll be that bad. I think they'll probably be like an 8, 9, 7-ish seed. But that is a ton of money to spend on a core like that. And you give up all your draft capital. If I'm the Jazz, I'm asking for every single pick possible. I don't really care that much about the young players from the Knicks. Obviously, if I can get guys like Emmanuel Quickley, Obi Toppin, Quentin Grimes, like really fun young pieces, like I said, they're not going to get RJ, then yeah, I'm definitely going to take those. But what I really want is their draft capital. Because I think there's a good chance, like you get their pick this year, there's a chance that could be a lottery pick. If they make the play-in tournament and lose, I think there's a real shot that's a lottery pick. You look down like 5, 6 years in the future, teams can trade 2029 first-round picks right now. That doesn't even sound like a real year when you say it. So if I'm the Jazz and I see the Knicks, they come to me with an offer like Julius Randle, like what I mentioned before, like Julius Randle, Derrick Rose, like a young piece or two, like 4 picks or like 3 picks and like 3 pick swaps, whatever, I'm taking that immediately. Because I think those Knicks picks could become super valuable. Because we've seen that the Knicks really aren't a free agency destination that much anymore. Like, guys aren't going there. Like, obviously it's in New York, so you would expect guys to go there. It's a big market, but it's just really not happening at this point anymore. And so they're probably not going to get a ton of free agents. It's like a decent team, but barring like a huge jump from RJ Barrett, Jalen Brunson, and Donovan Mitchell, like they're all still young pieces, so there is a chance they all get better together, but I don't trust that team's defense, and I think even if they each take a little bit of a jump, you're not going to beat a Sixers, Bucks, Celtics, Raptors, Heat, like you're not inside that top 5, and you're going to give up all of your draft capital to be like, meh. Like with the Timberwolves when they traded for Gobert, they gave up a ton of capital, but I'm a believer in that team. I think Anthony Edwards, Karl Anthony Towns, D'Lo, Rudy Gobert, Jaden McDaniels as like a starting 5 is insane. And then you throw in guys like off the bench like a Kyle Anderson and Naz Reid. You've got a really good team there in Minnesota. I like that team a lot. I genuinely believe they could be one of the best 4 teams in the West. Because you've got like Anthony Edwards especially, I believe he can take a huge leap next season. You've got Cat, you've got Gobert, like there's a ton of talent there. They paid a ton for a guy who I think can turn them into a borderline contender. The Knicks situation here would be giving up all of their future draft capital to go all in on this core. For a guy in Donovan Mitchell, who I think is great, I think he is a really, really good young player, but I don't see him as like the guy who's going to take the Knicks over the hump. For me with Donovan Mitchell, I think that the teams that should be going for him are teams that are like a piece away from contending, like the Miami Heat. They make a ton of sense. Of course, they don't have the package that the Knicks have, so it's not going to happen because they have like Tyler Hero, 2 first-round picks. Like they can't make a deal happen the way that the Knicks can't, so it's not going to happen. But if I'm the Knicks, I'm not making that move. That is so much to give up. And there is a chance that they don't give up this much. But I really think that the Jazz have a ton of leverage here. They don't have to give up on Donovan Mitchell. He hasn't formally requested a trade as far as we know. There's a decent chance that this, like, all of a sudden, like, oh, we're talking to the Knicks thing could be him requesting a trade. We don't know. Could just be, holding on to his trade value a little bit there. But as far as we know, he has not formally requested a trade. So the Jazz have all the leverage in the world. He's under contract. Like, sure, they're rebuilding, but they could just go into next season with Donovan Mitchell on the roster. The Knicks are the team that really wants him. So they could definitely squeeze at least 3, 4 first-round picks, especially when you look at the market. And that's the big thing. The Rudy Gobert trade set the market right now. I think Donovan Mitchell has more trade value. He's younger, his contract's not as crazy, and it's not as big of a risk. Gobert being as old as he is, it is definitely a risk to take him on. With Donovan Mitchell, you know he's going to be really good for a few years. You know that for certain. So I just want to make this video because I've seen like all the stuff about the Knicks with Donovan Mitchell, and I just really I love the idea of Donovan Mitchell playing in New York. I think he feels like a guy who would thrive in the New York environment. He hits big shots. He's a big time player. Like, it feels kind of right for him to be in New York, and they get that star player. So from like a financial standpoint, like making money, bringing in a guy like Donovan Mitchell would be huge for the franchise. I just can't help but think, like, in terms of team building, because obviously I don't have like a financial stake in the Knicks, I think it's a mistake. Unless you could get him for pretty cheap, it's going to be a mistake. They're going to give up too many assets for Donovan Mitchell. I just think it's going to end up being a big overpay, and I really don't see them as being more than a play-in team. Maybe more moves come and it ends up working out for them. Maybe they make some more moves using like Fournier's contract. They add like some more decent pieces, but it just feels like the trade market's drying up a little bit. And once you get Donovan Mitchell, you are committed to that team. Because now Brunson, Mitchell are on max contracts. You've got RJ coming up for a max contract extension as well. That is going to be your 3 guys. You're relying on a huge leap from Mitchell Robinson to be a better paint protector. Stay healthy is a huge thing for him too. You're relying on Obi Toppin, the flashes that he's shown in the minutes that he's played when Julius Randle's not in the court. If those are real, that could be huge for them too. But you're relying a lot on these jumps. You are really banking on these 3 guys taking leaps alongside Obi Toppin, Mitchell Robinson, and whoever they keep, like whether it's Emmanuel Quickley, Quentin Grimes, whoever they end up keeping out of their young guys. It's a huge gamble, and to me, I think it might be a mistake. So those are my thoughts on the Knicks and Donovan Mitchell. Let me know if you agree with me in the comment section below, or if you disagree with me, that's completely fine as well. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you did enjoy. I appreciate y'all watching. I'll see y'all later. Real one, say it back.